Hey, welcome back to World Entertainment, and this is the review for episode 3 of Picard season 3. As normal, I'll do a non spoiler and then we'll get into spoilers. So, the end of episode 2 was the Shrike chasing the Titan into the nebula, and with Raffi's story, she took the drug. She was going unconscious when the Ferengi and his people were going to kill her, and someone comes in and saves her, and it was Worf. So that's where we ended with those people. And this episode, we follow what's going on the Titan while it's being hunted by the Shrike in the nebula. Very kind of Wrath of Khan with that, with the nebula that interferes with your sensors and the view screen and everything like that. I suppose you could say a bit like Nemesis as well, in terms of the nebula and a couple of things that happen inside. So they're being hunted, and of course Picard has a big conversation with Beverly to find out how come she never told him. And Raffi wakes up to find Worf, who Worf is the ultimate Worf in this. He is out training, unfortunately, on that garbage fest of a ship. What was it called? The Last Serena or something like that. He's doing what we used to see him do in the Next Generation, and he's kind of doing his Klingon Tai Chi, but he's doing it with a sword. But he's listening to the music, the opera that Picard is listening to at the beginning of First Contact, when Riker comes into the ready room and Picard has a blast him. That exact music is playing when Worf is training, and he has interactions with Raffi. I won't go too far into that because it's kind of save it for the spoiler stuff. With the Titan, they can't pick up the Shrike, which means the Shrike, at least they believe the Shrike can't pick them up. There's a strange pulse coming through the nebula. What is it? Who turns out is a Vulcan, the bald crew member with the pointy ears. Everyone was like, is she Vulcan or is she Romulan? She's Vulcan. She says it has something signatures and biological signatures, which they never really bring up or go near again, unless it's kind of remember what they said here for further in to the series. But there seems to be biological, but they don't know what those pulses are. They find it strange, but they can't get too close to it. But the Shrike does show up and kind of attack, and they keep running. Picard wants to fight, Riker wants to run. What else? I'm trying to think what I can say without spoiling things. We do get, right after the credits, a flashback. It doesn't say to exactly when, it just says before. And it's Riker and Picard in that Guinan's bar 10 Ford, drinking, talking about it. It appears Riker has just had his son, the son that dies, because he still seems to be very much in command of the Titan, and they do de-aging on both Patrick Stewart and Jonathan Frakes in that scene. Beverly wants to help out in sick bay, but the chief medical officer kind of says no, because the advancements over the last 20 years, it would take her longer to explain it to her than to simply do it herself. And the end of the episode kind of leaves you on a couple of cliffhangers. We start kind of getting a few pieces put together as to why the Shrike is here. And it seems to be a bit linked to what's going on with Raffi's storyline. With the weapons more so. And there's quite a reveal. And with that, I will now have to get into the spoilers to really delve deep into it. But if you don't want to hear the spoilers, my overall for this episode, I was going to give it an 8 out of 10 until what happens at the end. Not the reveals or anything, just a moment. And it took a tiny bit away from me. So I'll give it a 7.5 out of 10. Yeah, Raffi didn't really have that much to do this time. It was more Worf. Thankfully so. Yeah, so with that, I'll get into the spoilers and we can really delve into this episode. So here comes spoilers in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Full spoilers. So Beverly's conversation with Picard is obviously about Jack. And he wants to obviously know why in the hell she never told him about Jack. And she basically says because if the galaxy found out he was the son of Jean-Luc Picard, he would always have a target on his back. And she never felt she could look after his son. She could look after her son, not his son. And she brings up, their relationship ended because they were on shore leave together. The Enterprise called Picard back early, which he went, and she says, every time the galaxy calls, you always go running. And she knew the relationship was over, and he didn't. He was like, well, I never knew that. And she says, like, she was losing him to the stars. She lost her ex-husband, well, not ex-husband, former husband, Jack Crusher, who died. Isn't that weird that she named her and Picard's son Jack after her first husband? A little bit weird. She even mentions Wesley. She goes, I lost Wesley to the stars, and she didn't want to lose Jack. She didn't want him to be constantly having to look over his shoulder, basically, because the name Picard may be attached to him. We find out that 7 of 9 has been confined to quarters for disobeying orders, like taking the Titan to this sector, whatever the sector is called, I can't bloody remember. And LaForge, I'm not sure what the character's first name is, but Geordie's daughter, the helmsman, she goes to C7 and basically kind of gives Seven a bit of a pep talk, and she basically says, everyone expects you to follow in certain people's footsteps and stuff, and the only reason basically she managed to get onto the Titan and give her position was because of who she is, being Geordie's daughter, and that there was always a bit of a pushback because she wanted to be a pilot instead of an engineer like her father. Ironically, they seem to forget that Geordie started off as the helmsman of the Enterprise D. Beverly's in sickbay helping out the injured, and the head nurse chief medical officer seems to be a bit pissed about that. And Beverly's like, oh, put me to work. And she's like, no, it'll take too long to explain everything to you. That's when they end up having the conversation. Her and Picard. Picard comes in and they have the conversation. While they're having the conversation, Jack is pacing up and down a corridor with Riker just staring at him, laughing basically. And they have a bit of a conversation, and Jack asks him, like, have you got a family? Jack, by the way, mentions that Beverly, he knows so little about Riker and the crew and stuff that Beverly used to mention them every now and again. And that when she did, her eyes would light up, she'd be happy, and then she'd be sad. And then we go back into, and that's when Jack asks Riker, has he got a family? And he mentions, yeah, I have a wife, a daughter, and I had a son. And then we go back into Picard and Beverly, and Picard like really lays into Beverly. He's like screaming basically at her, saying like, how dare you decide for me, and all this type of stuff. But she tells him that she did tell Jack about him and that he was his father years ago, and tried to convince him to go and meet Picard, and he refused. So Picard comes out and tells Riker, right, we got to get to the bridge and we got to do that. And Riker's trying to convince Picard to now talk to your son. He's like, basically irrelevant now. So they go to the bridge and the shrine. By the way, because they've no sensors, they literally have people standing at windows staring out to see if they can see the Shrike. And sure enough, the Shrike comes through, and one of the, I'm going to assume she's an ensign, spots it, tells the bridge where it is, its distance. They can't figure out how the Shrike found them, fires on them, badly damages the Titan, and takes Shaw out. Shaw ends up busted. His bones coming out of his leg. He's spitting up blood. He's badly injured, and he tells Riker, looks Riker directly in the eye and goes, you got us into this mess, you can get us out, and transfers command to Riker. Riker says get him to sick bay, and then asks Picard to give him a voice and stuff. And Riker says, fire an aft. He says, Jean-Luc, can you fire an aft torpedo, and before it gets to the Shrike, hit it with a phaser, and hopefully the shockwave. And Picard goes, before you even finish the sentence, torpedoes away. Does it? It ignites, blows the Shrike, like the shockwave from that blows the Shrike back into a section of the nebula, and they were able to get away basically. And then, what do you call it? Riker says, good work, Jean-Luc, and Picard turns and goes, Riker, or Will, I think it's time you start calling me number one. And they smile. And then we go to Raffi waking up to Worf training, and she's like, who the hell are you? She comes up behind him with a phaser, about to shoot him. And before she gets up to him, he's not even looking. He puts the sword back on his knife, pulls out one of the Klingon daggers, throws it behind him without looking. It lands like in the floor, right beside her foot, and as she looks down, he jumps up and whips the phaser out of her hand, points it at her, and then puts it down. She's like, who the hell are you? And he gives one of the best Worf speeches. And funny, he's like, I'm Worf, son of Moog, House of Mortog, son of, I can't think of the humans, Alexander, I think it was, House of Rozhenko, Bane of House Duras, Slayer of Galron, something else. And then he goes, and I'm making chamomile tea, do you take sugar? And you're just like, what? And she's like, well, Worf, I've heard about you, like, you're a legend. And you're my handler. And he's like, yep. And basically tells her, look, we're going to work together. That the person who sold the weapon, that portal weapon that destroyed the Federation recruitment center and dumped it out, was a human. So they're going to go and look for him. So Picard and Riker then are on the bridge of the Titan, and Picard wants to fight the Shrike, and Riker's like, no, we need to hide, we need to evade. And Picard's just desperate to fight it. Now that he knows Jack's the son, he's just desperate to fight the Shrike to try and fend it off. But he's like, look, we're outnumbered. You know, their weapon systems are so advanced and all this. It's not the Enterprise we're on. We can't do this. You know, we won't survive this. And then we go down to sickbay where Shaw has been brought in. There's trails of blood. And he's on the table and he seems to be kind of going in real distress. And Beverly runs over and asks the chief medical officer again, can she help? And she's like, no. And she's like, Beverly turns around and goes, Captain, are you struggling to breathe? And he nods, yeah. And she starts pressing on his stomach, goes, does that hurt? Does that hurt? Does that hurt? She holds her hand in one section, and when she goes, what about now? And when she whips her hand up, he's in agony. And she goes, right, he's got internal bleeding. We got to flip him. And the medical nurses, he can't be bleeding. The scanner didn't show up into the thing. And Beverly tells her, yeah, they don't pick up concussion trauma. That could happen later. So they flip him on the side, and Jack is there trying to help him. And Shaw asks him, how the hell does the Shrike Vadic keep finding them? And Jack sees the trail of blood, and obviously he has some idea. At this stage, the Shrike has shown up again and is attacking the Titan while Jack is trying to get to the bridge. So Riker's plan was to turn the Titan around and run to get engineering ready to go to warp as soon as they leave the nebula. So they're going to leave the nebula, and right as they're coming out, the Shrike is right behind them. So he gives the order to go, but they have to wait until they fully get out of the nebula. And as they're going out, the Shrike starts arming up this weapon, and it must be the weapon that they didn't recognize when they scanned the ship. And they're like, what the hell is that? So the Shrike fires, but the beam goes past the Titan, but opens up a portal in front of them. And they're like, what the hell is that? And they're being pulled in. It's too close to them. And they go through it, and they come out of another one right in front of the Shrike, back inside the nebula. And they try and run again. And again, the Shrike just fires and pulls them back in. And Riker is like, crap, you know. And Picard is still like, we need to fight. And they're like, no. So then we go back to Raffi and Worf, and they find the guy, and Worf is like telling Raffi, there he is, we've been spotted, he's on the run, they're running after him. Raffi starts listening, and Worf grabs the dude and gives him an almighty chokeslam through a table. And Raffi's like looking at him and he goes, beheadings are on Wednesdays. You know, Worf got some great lines in this. Then we're back, and the Shrike is just firing everything at bloody the Titan. But Jack, because he can't get to the bridge, he goes to Seven and says, right, you were one of the Fennec Rangers. What was the trick with the blood in the water? And Seven thinks he's like trying to just rile her up, and he's not. No. He goes, surely you remember. And she remembers, like, it was a trick that if your ships were leaking a particular gas, that sensors wouldn't pick up. Something else could pick it up and you'd find them. So they go looking and they find that there's a gas leak in one of the, I don't know whether it's a cargo bay or where, and they find that the pipes were cut with a phaser, that it was sabotage. So they inform the bridge and say, look, it seems to be deliberate. So Picard again starts saying to Riker, look, we gotta fight. And Riker's like, no, we can't fight. With that then, Jack gets attacked by the saboteur in the room. He's trying to turn off the gas. Seven went somewhere else to do it. I don't remember seeing Seven leave or hearing her saying she was going to leave, but she's somewhere. The saboteur attacks him. It's a guy you recognised earlier in the episode, but his face kind of changes a bit before Jack passes out. And then we go to Worf and Raffi interrogating the other guy, and Raffi, it's almost like good cop, bad cop. Raffi's like threatening to cut his fingers off and rip his nails out and stuff, and Worf's like, no. And he looks like he's in withdrawal symptoms. They bring Jack to sick bay. Seven hails Picard, tells him, you better get down here. Jack is hurt. They go down. He's flatlined. They're trying to get him back. They get him back. Then we go to Raffi and Worf interrogating the guy again. And he's talking about, he tries to say the Romulans took it, and they're like, we know that Romulans didn't take the weapons. Who did? And he's like, I did. They're like, why? And he says a few things. I can't quite remember. And his face starts changing. Worf realizes, he goes, it must be a great struggle to be away from the Great Link. That's right, folks. He's a shapeshifter. And he's struggling to maintain his form. And that's why he looks like he's in withdrawal symptoms. He's struggling to maintain the form. And he eventually melts away, and Worf vaporizes him. But the one on the Titan has just set a bomb. So the Titan goes to run again. And oh, by the way, Worf tells Raffi, right, now we're partners. But you realise, okay, so there's a shapeshifter here, but there's a shapeshifter on the Titan. And then when you realise the Titan's weapon that it's keeping, or not the Titan, the Shrike's weapon that's keeping the Titan there, is in fact the same weapon that seemed to have been used to destroy the building, because it went through the portal type thing. Things are starting to add up. So this changeling on the Titan put a bomb on it, so they're about to go and jump to warp again, and the bomb goes off and deactivates the warp. They've lost warp. So Picard once again to Riker goes, Will, now's the time to attack. We have to attack. You have to turn the ship around. We have to attack. So kind of reluctantly, Will does give the order to come full about and prepared to attack. But when they do, they set up a trap, by the way. Because Picard wants to fight, because he says they don't know that we know that they can track us. So they set up a different gas thing, another for the Shrike to follow, with the idea that if they have to, they can come up and they'll be behind the Shrike, so they can hit her from behind. So, but when they turn around and spot the Shrike is already facing them. So they fire torpedoes. Riker gives the order, fire everything we got. They fired a bunch of torpedoes. The Shrike opens up one of them portals again, and the portal opens up right behind the Titan, and she basically shot herself. They lose power, and they're dropping into part of the nebula that they don't want to be in. That it's basically you're done for if you go into it. And this is the part that I didn't particularly like. I thought this part let the episode down. For me, anyway, it let it down. Was Riker turned Will, like Picard's like, oh, Will. Riker just turns around and goes, get the hell off the bridge. You've just killed us all. And the episode ends with the Titan just falling deeper into the cloud thing. That's not the reaction Riker would have ever given to Picard. They know the risks when they're out there, and it was just very un-Riker. Which was a shame as well. Look, we know probably next week or whatever they'll all be fine again and talking about, Will, I'm sorry, and no, Picard, I'm sorry, type stuff. It's just that was never the type of reaction you'd have ever gotten from Riker towards Picard. To turn around to him and tell him, like, you've just killed us all. Yeah. And to get the hell off the bridge, like, it was strange. Particularly when the rest of the scenes with them two were great. But anyway, that's the episode. So as I said, I was going to give it an 8 out of 10, but that last moment with Riker kind of took away from me a bit. So 7.5 out of 10 for this episode. So bring on next week. And with that, I'll leave you there for this one. Cheers. Catch you in the next one.